the effect of context on how we see and how we see shifts in context. And so I'm going to do this first in a very simple visual way by saying, what do you see? Circle.
Head.
So, what do you see?
10.
Now, what do you see? Yeah. So, to me, one thing that's quite interesting about that is that this didn't change, but how we saw it changed simply by changing the context in which we saw it. So, one of the challenges in the organization is to create a context in which we see in the way which is most generative. We see what is possible. We see the resources that are available. We see the strengths which can be connected. We see the possibilities embedded in the situation and what we can do to bring them to life. So, this is something, when we began here, how we saw that to begin with and how we saw it every time is something we also were taught. It was a way, because this is, however you describe it, you could describe it in many ways. It's, you know, a line in space. It's blue on a field of squares, or however you want to describe it. But if you say this is circle, it's only because at some point in your life, probably at about 2.5, you know, Igor was taught this is a circle. And you hold the shape and you have a bowl and you play with the ball and you learn what circle is. And then maybe at about age, I don't know, 5, someone says, this is a number. You say, I thought that was a circle. I say, no, that's a number. Oh, okay. And then you get to another challenge, which is, what do you see? Now, say that to me, I see cop, policeman, big Chicago, you know, you're in the Ukraine and you see this, you see sword. And it means something completely different. So if I see this on a sign, and what I see is cop, and it's a trash dump, and I'm looking for the police, that's extremely confusing to me. Because in my frame of reference, it says one thing and means another. But it's because my frame of reference doesn't know how to interpret what it meant to the person who wrote it, or the language in which it's written. So one of the great challenges we have is that language, whether we're talking language like English and Ukrainian, or whether we're talking language like business and science, or whether we're talking language like dance or business plan. That language will always set a frame of reference and way of seeing, and that assumes many things about a shared way of seeing, which may or may not be true. So, to say that in another way, even the same words and same structures also change meaning over time. So if you have the example that at the point that you meet your about-to-be wife and you say, I love you, and she says, ooh. And then you go to the altar and say, I love you. And she says, he means it. And then 30 years goes by and your wife is very sick and you're in the hospital with her. And maybe someone just cut off her breast and you say, I love you. In all of those contexts, the same people with the same words, a world of difference in what is being said. So, one of the challenges, and it's a really significant challenge we have, is finding the medium, the language for expressing this new thing that we can sense and feel and somehow see inside in our own particular world, which is always particular. Because someone taught me to see in a way than many people taught me to see, and how I see is different from every other person in the world, as it is for you. So, when we're looking, for instance, and asking the question, how do you see what's happening now in the Ukraine? The reason that's important is not as a set of facts, but as a set of perceptions which influence how you act. Because if you're a new business entrepreneur and someone says, this is an impossible time to start a business here, and the government is uncooperative and no one cares and the tax situation is impossible, then the consequence of my seeing that way may be that you leave and go to America. So, how I've seen and what I've said actually has had a kind of consequential moral impact in shaping what becomes true. So that if I see that way, then I actually contribute in real measure to the brain drain from the Ukraine, because that's what I saw and said. Now, I'm not disputing that those things may all be true. I'm only talking about the power of the framework and what it shapes in terms of then what becomes true. So, what I'd like to, is any questions about that as a concept? And just to notice that we always act out of what we believe is true. Always. Every one of us acts out of what we have come to believe is true, and that's different for every person. So everyone is always acting in good faith, out of what we actually believe is true. Whatever that is. So, when we have the opportunity to come together in a setting like this, one of the very important things about it is it gives us an opportunity to see in a new way, to see a new version of life, to see a new version of our country, to see a new version of the possibilities. And so I would really ask during these 2 days to challenge yourselves to be very aware of what you share and the consequences of what you say. Because in every moment, we're actually recreating the world for each other. And it has consequences. So,